It is. I do a little bit of that myself. I think, oh, I can just build this. No, even I need a plan for my own stuff.
Yeah, my oldest son just bought a house in Washington, D.C. So he said he closed on a Thursday, and we're talking to him Thursday night, and he said, oh, and by the way, there's lots of yard work that needs to be done. So Dad,
come and visit.
Yeah. No, come and work, slave labor.
Yeah.
Oh, there they are, the Bobbsey twins. You think they heard us?
You'll know.
Laughing. She's not laughing. Now, Ryan, wasn't I in that room last night?
Wait. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got you good. Yay.
6 feet. So, how get that hair?
It's my Albert Einstein lookalike.
Oh my gosh, it kind of is.
Yeah. Too bad I'm not as smart as he is.
You might not want to part it.
I don't want to part it?
No, what's that? Go away. There we go. All right.
It's tough to get a comb through it. I got to get, what are you supposed to use? That teasers? I don't know.
Teaser? What?
What are you supposed to use in your hair when it gets long like that? Conditioner.
The rubber band.
Rubber band. Yeah, man.
Good thing you're not online.
It's not my
You gotta
fault.
get a picture today.
The what now?
You want that different?
No,
You
I
want
just
that?
want us to see us a little bit more.
Oh, she doesn't like the way I have this.
Mm.
Wait a second. We're gonna readjust.
Okay, is that better?
Okay.
Yeah.
We're readjusting.
Looks like we have a body and just not a
All right.
head.
Here we are.
I forgot my coffee.
James, you look like really relaxed, easy
Oh,
going.
yeah. Working from home now, this is the life.
You don't have to go to the job site?
I do go to job sites on occasion, but
Where's my
but
coffee?
for the most part, I'm working from home.
So you don't have to row the boat every day then, huh?
Not every day, although I did kayak over this morning for a project and came back. So that's
Ryan, you talk way too much.
I've been on mute here.
Yeah. How are things going with you?
Good, kind of similar to James, just working from home.
Yeah. All right.
So how big is that little son of yours?
I think he's like, I don't know, we measured him the other day. He was like 33 inches, and I don't know about his weight. He's probably, I don't know, feeling pretty heavy these days. So I don't know, 25, 30 pounds maybe. I don't know.
Well, 33 inches is pretty big.
Yeah.
Is he already in bed?
He's in the bath right now.
Oh, okay. All
Yep.
right.
So anything exciting with you, Tiffany?
Nothing's exciting with me. I'm working from home and I'm sparing you all the background here because I am in my bedroom and you probably don't want to see it. Otherwise, all good.
So you can like black out your background?
Yeah, you guys could too.
Oh,
I like it like this. My granddaughter actually does her online at school in my bedroom, but they're not allowed to put their video on.
Oh, okay.
So, which is a good thing because sometimes they don't sit appropriately.
Yes. Well, you're tempted, once you figure out how to put pictures behind you or images behind you and these things, you can imagine what some people have posted and
Oh,
No.
yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
figured a solid color was safe.
Oh, someone's here. Hey, Dave. Are you the real Dave or the robot Dave tonight?
He'll be real for a little bit.
The robot Dave.
Yeah, when your voice is going.
Do I sound better now?
Yes.
You do. It's
Yeah.
my theory is that once he goes on mute and he comes back, I think that's when he has a problem. So we're going to try to keep him off mute tonight.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just don't talk while you're not supposed to.
Hey, a young person lives across the street from me, occasionally walks around Lake Wahop, and she came with a suggestion, and I really praised her. You know, it's nice when young people are looking out for the community. Wahop's got the algae stuff in it right now, and they've got signs posted way far away. But as she walks around there, every place there's access to the water, there's people with their dogs, and they're out there wading in it and all those kind of things. Her suggestion would be that we maybe should put signs at any place you can access a lake. Is that, it's probably not a planning commission issue, but it may be a city issue.
That's a good point, because I see it too when I'm going around there.
Yeah, she didn't want to be a tattletale, but she just,
Well, no, it's not really being a tattletale. I mean, people can take their dogs and kids in there if they want. They're just getting sick.
potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm on.
Good, nice to see you.
Thank you. It was, it wouldn't allow me to log on here. I had to update and then it was all jacked up and I was frantic.
Frantic. Mm-hmm.
Hey, James, thank you so much for filling in.
Oh, no problem.
When I was very poor internet service down in Arizona, and it was just too hard to try to maneuver. I sounded like Dave Buer, you know, that day, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. Thank you. You did a great job.
You're welcome. No problem.
And then sorry, 1 second. Karen, is that you on the phone? Can you hear and speak and you're ready to go?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Chair, I think you've got everybody here. We're live on YouTube. So just within a couple minutes, we'll get going, yeah?
You got it.
Okay. And this should be a relatively brief meeting, everybody.
Please.
You've been busy over the last couple months. You've had a lot of meetings.
And just, yeah, it's been pretty hectic.
You got Arizona saved.
So now that my voice has been fixed, I may choose to talk very slow this evening.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, but I've got the volume control, dude. I'll just turn you off.
Great. Sounds good. Okay. Who's that 253? Who's that 531? Who's that?
That's Karen.
Oh, Karen. Okay, right. Great.
Yeah, I don't have anybody else logged in into this, but they can also be watching live on YouTube, and I wouldn't know that.
Right. Great. So we'll get going here in just a minute.
We're going to get used to this just in time to have to come back together in person, huh?
Yeah, no kidding. Get it all the kinks worked out, and then you, okay, now we're going to be in person.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of these, and it's various internet, cutting out. Mine at home here is going to sometimes lock up, and freeze. So
Yep.
it's just, I've called the internet, Comcast, and, oh, you got the most, up to date, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, really. I'm not even sharing the screen or doing anything on my end except just talking. But I noticed the last meeting, Connie and Nancy, they froze up as well too when we were with the council. So it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah. All right.
We're ready to go. We're call this Planning Commission meeting to order this June 3rd, 2020. If Karen, if you could call roll, please.
Coleman Lackady,
Present.
Connie Coleman Lackady, thank you. Don Daniels,
Here.
James Guerrero,
Here.
Nancy Hudson Eccles,
Here.
Ryan Pearson,
Here.
Paul Wegman.
Present.
You have quorum, Chair.
Great, thank you so much. Before us, we have the minutes of May 20th, 2020. Looking for a motion to look at those minutes.
I'll make a motion and we accept the minutes as written.
Mr. Wegeman made a motion to approve and as
We'll
written.
second that.
And Ms. Eccles second that. Any discussion, changes? Hearing or seeing none at this time. All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes to accept the minutes as written. Thank you. Any changes to our agenda today, Ms. Tiffany?
No, Mr. Chair.
Great. So at this time, public comment, we will open up public comment. And I did not see any written comments at this time. Was there any written comments?
Ms. Devereaux?
I did not receive any written comments.
Great. So seeing there was none of those written comments submitted to us, we will close the public comment period as well. So we move right to number 6, the unfinished business. And Ms. Tiffany?
Thank you. So let me just get my share screen going here.
Oh, what happened? Did something. Oh, no, she did something. She did something.
All right, so what you see on my screen right now is the agenda for today. Tonight, we're going to start with the discussion of the annual development regulation amendments. Last meeting, you had a public hearing on this, and there were no comments received, but there are some changes this evening that Mr. Bew and I are going to go over with you. And this is the night where you're scheduled to actually take action on them.
Okay.
So we've already gone through the minutes. If you happen to have your packet open, this begins on page 5, but I'm going to jump right into a PowerPoint presentation, which includes some new and updated information, as I just mentioned. So please, give me one more second here. Oops, sorry, one second. There we go. All right, so as was discussed last time when this was introduced to you and then at the public hearing, there are a number of amendments that are included in this packet for you for different reasons. There's things that were identified in the code as scrivener's errors, if you want to call them that. There are some changes to 18A, which are really clean after having it in place for a while, and the Community and Economic Development Department has been using it as well as the public. And then there's amendments that have been proposed for Titles 1, 12, 14, 15, and 17, and then the 18A. And then if you remember the multifamily tax exemption, you took public comment on that, none was received, but that is actually a chapter that the City Council has purview over, so we will not be asking you to provide a recommendation on that chapter this evening. And then as you see at the bottom of this slide, there are a couple of new amendments that I just mentioned, and so we'll go over those in a little more detail. So to summarize again what you've got in the big packet, there were some hearing examiner appeal amendments made on the recommendation of our legal department. Jumping down to Title 12, it was simply the addition of definition. In Title 14, which is the environmental protection chapter, it's references then the Washington Administrative Code that have been updated, meaning they've repealed certain sections and renumbered them at the state level. So we just needed to update references there. Title 15, which is buildings and construction, that's really where our building official has most of his information and regulations. There's the addition of the International Existing Building Code as something that the city uses. And then within Title 17, which is subdivisions, again, updating references between Title 17 and Title 12. And then there's a new chapter within there regarding plat alterations, which is information that actually used to be in another part of the code and has been brought into chapter 17.17. Then we get over into 18A. Again, there's some Scrivener errors and there's definitions. There's some changes to uses allowed in various tables. If you remember, there's those tables that are either residential, commercial, industrial, what have you. So some changes there that we've gone over. There are several new things, and if I could find them on your list here, I would tell you about them. They're right there. Okay. So there was actually an addition suggested at the first version of this packet regarding outstanding permit fees that were first incorporated into this title, but they really belong in a different chapter of the municipal code. These are referring to public works fees. And so we are recommending that they get pulled back out of this title update tonight. The second one is regarding accessory dwelling units or ADUs. And that is in reflecting a change that was made in House Bill 2343 by the state legislature, adopting it in this past legislative session. Mr. Buer, I don't know if you want to add anything more there.
There's actually two sections of law that were adopted by the state. One was a House bill, the other one was a Senate bill. For the most part, they kind of say sort of the same thing. It's basically accessory dwelling units and lessening the level of restrictions. One of the requirements of this one, HB 2343, was to include accessory dwelling units in other zoning districts besides the ones that we already allow for ADUs. So what we're doing is we're adding those other zoning districts, MR1, MR2, MF1, MF2, and TOC. And the reason that those have been selected is because in the state bill, it says that all ADUs are supposed to be allowed within 1/4 mile of a transit route. And if we include those specific zoning districts listed there, we end up catching all of those areas where the state would want us to have ADUs. So it's an effort on my part to align our local code with state provisions. This may require some further adjustment in 2021, but for now, this I think will work for us. Any questions on my part? Yes.
Sorry, 1 second. There we go.
Any questions? Oh, Miss Eccles, unmute yourself. Unmute. Yeah.
Okay, am I good?
Yep.
Okay, the last meeting, James, you brought up the square footage issue on those dwellings. Can you repeat what you said on the last meeting? Were you wanting to increase that? Just go ahead and repeat what you said the last meeting.
Yeah, so the code it differentiates between an attached ADU and a detached ADU, and one of them limits the size to 600 square feet and the other allows it up to 1,000 square feet. And I was suggesting having it 1,000 square feet for all ADUs.
Mr. Buer.
I've thought about Mr. Guerrero's question since the last meeting. I will tell you from a management of ADUs, it's easier to approve a detached ADU than an attached ADU, because we get into all kinds of issues with the existing building and entrances and exits. So the more I thought about it, having 1,000 square feet is an incentive for people to do detached units versus having them proceed with an attached unit. It's perfectly acceptable for the commission to change that if they want. That's fine, but that's my thought on the amendment.
So for those of you who may not have heard that, I'm sorry, Dave, my theory didn't work. So your voice is starting to sound strange again. What he was essentially saying is now in this packet tonight, it does make an amendment to say that both would have 1,000 square feet. And so let me jump to that really quickly. Yeah, so right here under 184110B1J, this where it is underlined and talking about 1,000 square feet for accessory dwelling units. That is an increase from the 600 square feet that you saw last time.
Okay,
Responding to Mr. Guerrero's comments last time.
okay. Thank you.
Sure. And then the other one that's in here that's new for tonight is there was a deletion of a section currently provided to you without change. Now we're asking that it be taken out because there's, again, this is related to accessory dwelling units. Once upon a time, there was a requirement of, or there was an allowance that cities did require owners to occupy the primary dwelling unit, and or in other jurisdictions, it could be the ADU itself, but the owner would be somewhere on site. That's now changed again. So it's saying the owner does not need to be in either one of the structures. And so we're removing it out of the Lakewood Municipal Code as a result of that state change. Any other comment on these, Mr. Buer?
Yep, Mr. Pearson.
So the amendment was not reflected in the, like on page 41, because that still has the attached ADU as 600 square feet max.
Right. The large packet, I apologize, got sent out to you prior to these changes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, we're trying to point out for you tonight is that there are 2 or 3 that are new since that packet got to you.
And Mr. Guerrero?
Thank you. Thanks for addressing that. I appreciate that. I did have a couple more comments about ADUs, and then also a couple other areas in the code. So I'll start with the ADUs. The way this is written on, it starts on page 41 of our packet. And item A allows ADUs in duplex, triplex, townhouses, or other housing units. And I'm guessing that that's a response to House Bill 2570 that would kind of indicate that's what we're supposed to do. But that bill has not been approved as far as I can tell, but I think we're kind of anticipating it. Is that the case that we've included all those other items?
Can you hear
Sorry,
me?
Mr. Chair, is this or I'm sorry, Mr. Guerrero, is this where you're referring to? Is this subsection right up on the screen?
But further up on the page.
Okay.
Number A.
Yeah, number A, yeah, A. Right, so it's allowed in these, which Mr. Buer just referred to all the zoning that would allow these, and so I'm guessing that's kind of making those match up. Is that the case?
He's shaking his head,
Yes.
yes, Mr. Buer.
Okay, which I think is fine. D we've addressed. H, item H requires a minimum of 1 off-street parking space. If House Bill 2570 passes, we actually wouldn't be allowed to do that. But if it does pass, it won't come into effect until July. We won't have to modify our code until July of 2021. So I guess I'm trying to understand if it seems like some of these things are in anticipation of the state making changes, and some of them we just want to make. Is that the case?
Well, the 2 bills have already passed.
Okay, so the 2 bills that you referred to, I think, were different numbers than the one I researched was 2570. And
I have a listing, I don't have it with me, but there are 2 bills that dealt with accessory dwelling units. Both passed. Both indicated that the rules would have to come into play July 2021. We were just trying to get ahead of this a little bit, that's all.
okay, so if those bills were kind of, well, I think I'll just drop it because I don't know what those bills said. The one I read would say you can't actually require parking for an ADU. So I'll just drop that. If we need to modify it later, we can. But going on to 42M and N, which.
Well, Mr. Buer, before you do that, Mr. Buer wanted to comment still.
The 2 bills that passed dealing with accessory dwelling units, the requirements don't line up perfectly. That's part of the problem with ADUs.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Guerrero.
Thank you. So page 42, item M, and then on the next page, item N, we took out the language that required an owner to be a resident. But then later so we took out item 1, which requires that. And then item 2 says we still have to have a covenant, but I can't tell what the covenant refers to.
This section, letter M, like mother, is the one that we were just saying should get removed altogether.
Great. And then item N, discontinuation of an ADU, has a reference to owner occupying the space also. So number 2 refers to the owner occupancy, which no longer is part of our code, right?
So that's N as in Nancy on page 43, the number 2.
Correct.
I would recommend that the planning commission just delete N as well.
Great. I concur with that. So. Okay. That was the questions I had on ADUs. I have some other areas I want to talk about also, but do you want me to address those now, or?
If it's in related to this specifically, yes, go ahead.
Yes, it is. Okay. So I had page 43, boarding houses. The parking requirement is 1 stall per occupant, and then it has an ability to adjust that if an occupant doesn't own a vehicle. But I guess in my mind, I'm not super familiar with boarding houses, but my guess is they're for people that are in maybe a little more transient in nature, and you might end up with people that don't have cars as much. And so I'm not sure the parking requirement matches what the type of people we expect to have that kind of lifestyle. So I was going to ask the other board members if 1 car per person is appropriate, or it should maybe be 1 car per two occupants to give it a little flexibility.
Any comment, Mr. Buer?
This section came about as a result of a request by the city council to include boarding houses to specifically address parking issues in single-family residential zones. So that's how this parking requirement came about. I'm just providing you history. If you wish to change this is an opportunity to do so.
So, Mr. Guerrero?
So, Mr. Buer, are we seeing cases where like a boarding house has too many cars at it, or is it just kind of preemptive?
It's difficult to police boarding houses because oftentimes they pop up with no announcement. Sometimes these boarding houses are also group homes, and group homes are treated differently than boarding houses. The issue here has been there were several boarding houses in the vicinity of Pierce College, and there are a significant number of vehicles parked on the property, in the front yard and along the street. And that's how this, in essence, came about.
Mr. Guerrero?
Okay, so it does sound like it's in response to too many cars for the facility. So I rescind my my thought. I think that's fine to keep it the way it is. So on page 48, this is kind of a quirky one. Now, page 48, item E, railroad cars, shipping containers, and semi-truck trailers shall not be placed or maintained in any single-family residential, mixed residential, or multifamily residential zone district. It happens that there's a kind of a movement to use shipping containers in as a component of single-family residences, and so I actually have only been involved in one of these, but they don't when they're used in this manner, they don't usually look. It's not like it looks like a shipping container that just someone just dropped on the site. They're usually windows are cut out of them, and there are multiple boxes placed together. And so I think the intent is that we don't want people dumping shipping containers in a residential areas, which I agree with. But I'm worried that this provision might preclude the ability for someone to build a shipping container house that actually has quality.
Yes, Mr. Buer.
I would suggest to the Planning Commission that if you saw a shipping container being converted into residential use, technically it would no longer be a shipping container because the building code is going to require several different extensive level of improvements. I would call it something else, some sort of modular construction, more akin to that than, say, someone proposing a shipping container.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Make a distinction there.
Yeah,
So
Mr.
if I could, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Perhaps the way to handle it then would be to go into the definition section and explain that within modular construction, shipping containers might be one of those things. So rather than touching this right here, we would actually make an amendment to 18A 10-180, the definition in there of different housing types, and make sure that the modular construction reference also includes shipping containers converted for that use.
That sounds a lot easier.
Okay.
Mr. Pearson, thumbs up, give the agreement. Mr. Guerrero, does that sound easy or
Yes.
to your?
I'm fine with that solution.
Okay, and go ahead. You can continue, Mr. Guerrero.
Okay, I have one last item.
Yep.
Mr. Pearson last week brought up the plat alteration, and that's on page 17. I understand this is a new section that got brought over from somewhere else, and I wanted to confirm the requirements that are listed here are fairly extensive, and I guess I wanted to confirm if this would be required for any plat, so including, say, a short plat of a single family residential property, would it be held to these standards?
No. Plat alteration is a type 3 permit. A short plat is a type 2 permit. The permitting requirements are different. And the plat alteration section that you see before you has been recommended by the legal department, because we're getting into some issues over existing plats and individuals wanting to amend the plat language on the plat document. And we thought it would be best to provide better clarification on this particular issue. This has to do primarily with older subdivisions in the city of Lakewood, where circumstances have changed and individuals want to see the plat language amended. Plat alterations are extremely difficult and require all property owners within the plat to agree to it. Plat alteration requires a hearing, a public hearing before the hearing.
Mr. Guerrero?
So I'm just trying to get my arms around how complex it is. So we have a plat that has it's a 30-year-old plat. It has 20 properties in it, and by the Lakewood zoning code, the properties are big enough that you could subdivide one of them and make two lots out of it. They would go through this, if that's what they want to do, they would go through this process in order to do that.
Maybe. It depends on the language found on the plat. This became a lawsuit issue about 5-6 years ago in the Lake City area, where the zoning allowed for R3 or R4, which was basically 7,500 or 5,000 square foot lots. And the lots themselves were half acre. So the city had changed the zoning and then did allow for a short plat to develop on one of these larger lots. The city approved the short plat, and a property owner within the plat sued and went to civil court and won. The basis for the action was the fact that the plat itself had specific language on the plat map that said for a single family detached residence, 1 per lot. So that trumps zoning and the comprehensive plan. And so to be able to develop at the higher density, you would have to go back, perform a plat alteration, remove that language, and get all the property owners in that plat to agree to it. It's no easy task, but we're seeing more and more of this, Mr. Guerrero, as property becomes more and more valuable and people wish to develop it and have a higher density. Sometimes these plats have very unique language on them. We're running into a similar problem in the country club estates with these older plats with private roads and easements that need to be amended in order to meet current development standards. Right now, that plat itself is vacant, so it's easier to proceed. But in order to do so, doing a boundary line adjustment is probably not the best way to go. Amending, reconfiguring lot lines, our legal department has said no. What you're really doing is altering the primary plat. Therefore, we have a plat alteration process being proposed.
Um,
Go ahead, Mr. Guerrero.
So that makes sense to me, and it makes sense that we want to protect the city from getting sued by approving plat alterations without the right information. So in concept, I absolutely agree with that. Looking at the language here, I suspect that there's very few cases that anyone will go through this amount of trouble to get a plat alteration. It's just so arduous.
Yes, Mr. Bjorn.
There are 2 or 3 being proposed right now. One on 79th Street, which is a private street with ongoing issues with density and group homes. They're looking into it. There's another one that's being proposed, I believe, again in the country estates area next to American Lake. So I thought it would be infrequent as well, but I have recently been surprised by the number of these that keep popping up.
Mr. Pearson, did you have a question?
Yeah, more of just a comment. It just seems odd that if you go through a short plat or a formal plat, that the document that you're going to amend and do the plat alteration is going to look completely different and require contours and some of the things on there, the utility information, trees, those things aren't typically shown on plats. So it just seems like it's going to create a pretty busy document. It restricts I like to have a little bit of flexibility on scale, on drawing scales, and requiring 1 to 50 seems like that should be like the minimum scale. But if you had a smaller, short plat or something that you could, zoom in a little bit more, that seems like that'd be fine. Just setting a limit, I guess, for like a minimum scale. But yeah, it seems like this kind of went through the city attorney and that was their recommendation. So, but seems like it's busy.
Mr. Bjorn.
I can certainly we will certainly forward those comments onto the city council, and we'll go through another
Round.
review with the city attorney's office before it gets final.
Great. So right now then, before us, Ms. Tiffany, did you have anything else to add or any other questions?
Give me just a second to open this back up for you.
Yep.
I had another question.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mr. Pearson.
I don't know what page it's on now. It's about the gate, the electronic fence. Let's see here. So I had a couple of questions. What's the common use for these fences? These electric fence, where are they used?
Okay. This came about as a result of a recent request for a clarification on our fence regulations. And yet typically they are going to be found in industrial zones. And we have listed them out in IBP, I1, and I2. Most cities do not have regulations on electrified fences, and we are being asked to review the matter. I actually spent an incredible amount of time looking into this. The electrified fencing standards that you have listed basically come out of the city of Spokane. And these regulations were developed between the city of Spokane and the fencing industry. They've also been reviewed by the police department and the fire department. They have approved of them. I've also went out and looked at electric fences where they are in the city of Tacoma. There's only 3 sites. They're all in industrial areas. They're located adjacent to large bodies of water, or they are located at the edge or the end of a private road or a dead-end street, or adjacent to the railroad right-of-way tracks where obviously there's not a whole lot of people in the area during the evening hours, and they have lots of expensive equipment. And so they put up electrified fences. To be honest, you don't even know they're there unless you look very carefully at the gates. And so in the development of this, you are required to put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk and landscaping, and then a metal fence, like an iron rod fence. And then the electric fence would be behind it up to a maximum height of 8 feet. The strands for the electric fence are thinner than what you would find on other gauge fencing. We spent several weeks on this subject. At first, I was very reluctant to think that this was a good idea. But after taking a look at other fences, not only in Tacoma, but in other places throughout the United States, it seemed to be something that people were interested in doing. And it seemed to be a reasonable use in certain zoning districts, such as Industrial Business Park, I-1, which is also industrial, and I-2. And I would, anything of a service commercial nature, particularly if it's adjacent to I-5, it may not be a bad approach. It is certainly better than razor wire.
Yes.
And so why the minimum height of 8 feet? Is that just like a electric fence standard? Does that require, I mean, normal fences over 6 feet require a building permit, don't they? So would these fences require some sort of building permit? I guess, do they have their own use, some sort of permit, I guess?
They would require a permit because they extend over 6 feet in height. They also require an electrical permit to be issued by Labor and Industries or the city of Tacoma. The minimum maximum height for electric fence is 8. The minimum height for electric fence is 8 feet. Many of them want to go up to 12. We thought that was too obtrusive. So 8 feet seemed to be a standard that other cities were using. And so we are suggesting the 8 feet minimum in this case.
Okay.
Again, this is us trying to respond to the industry and changing issues on security. Again, at first, I thought I was very reluctant to even consider this. But after looking into it and the level of work that other cities have done, it actually seemed to be not unreasonable.
Would people ever want to put in a shorter than 8 foot fence? I mean, or are they trying to put up just as tall as they can get to keep their stuff secure?
They would prefer to go to 12 feet or 10 feet.
Okay.
So I think, Mr. Buer, I think because it was pretty scrambled, he says that they'd prefer to go to 12, but 8 feet is pretty common in the other cities' codes. So that's what they're recommending, is a maximum of 8 feet. Thanks, Mr. Buer.
Max of 10.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan. Did you have anything else?
Oh, it's max of 10, minimum of 8, max of 10.
Okay. Did you see that, Mr. Buer? Is that right? Max of 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then I stand corrected.
Okay, no problem. That's good. Mr. Wagaman.
What kind of voltage do they run through this? I mean, you want to fry somebody when they get up there, or do you just want to tickle them?
It's a battery. It's not even connected to the normal system. The electrical requirements are listed in the standards.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can try.
It just tickles you then. It tickles you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mrs. Tiffany.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Electrification, you see there on your screen now under subsection 3, talking about a commercial storage battery or batteries not to exceed 12 volts DC.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's a little bit of a jolt. Okay, any other
Deterrent.
questions? Yeah. Any other questions? Seeing none then. So before us then, we go ahead, Tiffany.
I'm sorry, just making sure that we get through everything else and we don't
Okay.
the rest of this. So we've gone through these additional changes tonight that are not included in your packet that was provided to you in the full materials sent last week. These are just some questions about ADUs. I don't think these really need to be gone over, but just for informational purposes, ADUs, there have been 9 requested in the last 5 years. There's some interaction between the city and the property owners regarding that restriction of owning and living either in the ADU or the primary unit. That's something the city can follow up on with property owners. And I think that's all I'm going to say. So where we sit tonight, as you know, tonight you're scheduled to take action, and then it's actually at this point scheduled to go to council starting next week. That's pending your decisions this evening. And then there's a couple of proposed amendments, which could actually be changed here to include the additional amendments that were mentioned orally this evening. So if I might, the proposed motion here would have, in addition to B1M, you would also include and N.
Mm-hmm.
And there'd be one more in here, which would be the 18A 10080 definition of modular housing to include modified shipping containers. So those would be incorporated into this first motion should you want to use it as the basis of your action.
Great.
That's it, Mr. Chair, from me.
Yep, that's it. Thank you. So yes, so we're looking if the fellow commissioners are ready to make a motion. I'm looking for that. If anyone, yes, Mr. Guerrero.
I would make a motion that we recommend approval of the 2020 development regulations, including proposed motion 1 as recommended, in addition to let's see.
What Tiffany said.
Yeah, 18A.40.110 residential uses, item B, subsection D, which is the size of the unit to allow that to be up to 1,000 square feet. I think the other one is written towards just the existing part as an aside. So, so including D, and then and also to include elimination of 18A.40.110 B1N. So elimination of that, and then the addition of a definition within the modular construction to allow shipping containers as a component of modular construction. That's what I'm proposing as the amendment. As an aside, I'm curious about the language on the plats. I think that I'd like there to be more tightening of that, and I understand it's coming from the attorney. I don't want to countermand what the attorney is saying. It does feel to me like it's more arduous than most people will be able to overcome, and I'm not sure that's our intent, but maybe it is. So I guess I'm asking the council, do we want to add anything towards the plat, or just leave it as is and say, well, it's attorney recommended, let's stay with it?
Any comments for Mr. Guerrero? He's got the motion. Mr. Viewer.
You could make a recommendation to rescind this section and request further review.
I'm not in favor of that portion of myself, but I would say I'm more in favor of leaving it there. The council and the public hearing and everything that they're going to be doing, they have the power to add, take out, change. At this time, I think the legal department has looked at it, and I understand Mr. Guerrero's comments, and you know way more than myself of how arduous or how cumbersome or the pros and cons, but at least someone else is going to be, the council is going to be looking at this as well, and so my favor would be leaving it as is, as now. I don't know.
I'm good with that as well. And a note to council just to take a look at it, I think was what Mr. Buer mentioned earlier.
Yep. Miss Connie Coleman. Lackady.
I was just gonna say too, I think the more specific we are and the better it is for us when the city council gets it. Instead of saying just go by what the lawyers was looking at. So we're looking at it a little bit differently, and I think that should be incorporated.
Okay, so Mr. Guerrero, are you fine with that at this time?
Yes, I'm fine with keeping the motion as I stated it.
Okay.
So it did not include the language about the plat.
Okay. So Mr. Guerrero has made a motion with all of those amendments and changes as we discussed and you heard. So at this time, I had a motion by Mr. Guerrero. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Pearson has seconded. Any other comments or discussion at this time? Mr. Wagaman, did you have a comment?
No, sir. I was
Okay.
just going to second, but I was a little slow.
Yeah, you were. Come on.
I had a general comment
Okay,
about the
yes.
ADU.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Pearson.
9 ADUs permitted over the last 5 years seems like a shockingly low number. I work for Pierce County and we see ADUs coming in, on a weekly basis. I know unincorporated Pierce County is larger than Lakewood, but it just seems like we may be missing the boat there, and hopefully some of this code changes will help allow some of that. I do think that the ADUs are a good place to get some, I guess the units don't count for densification, right? They're not counted towards the, but I think it's a good, it's a good use of money, to help with these high home costs and stuff. So we can get some more of those in there in a controlled manner. I think that's the right thing to do.
Great. Any other comments, or Mr. Wagaman?
I do. I want to come back to the parking thing. I think we left that as is, that they had to have one parking for this boarding thing.
Yes.
Our street looks like we just got a group home on it, and getting their employees when they do shift changes and stuff, it kind of blocks our street at this point in time. So I think it becomes an important issue, and it gets a frustration to the neighbors. So we need to be sensitive to that from my perspective.
Yes, sir. Any other comments? I don't see Connie. So hearing or seeing none, we'll take a vote. We had Mr. Guerrero made a motion and Mr. Pearson seconded. So all those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing or seeing none at this time, the motion passes with all of those amendments and changes in consideration. Thank you so much. So now moving to the next thing on the agenda is the first biennial review of the downtown sub area package.
Yes, and one more time, give me just a second to
No
get
problem.
the packet. We're starting on page 62 of the packet.
Yep.
You're muted.
What's that? Oh, yeah, Tiffany's muted. Yeah, there you go.
My apologies. I was saying such witty things too.
Okay, gosh, I was trying to read your lips and I couldn't.
Yeah. All right. So 2 meetings ago, the commission had an introduction of this topic, and then you did also have a public hearing on the downtown sub-area plan, and then the related hybrid form-based code, which is in LMC Lakewood Municipal Code Title 18B on May 20th. And what you have before you tonight is taking action on a recommendation back to the council on this first time that the ordinance required biennial or every 2-year review is taking place. And if you remember, the recommendation that came to you from the Community and Economic Development Department was not to make any changes to the plan or to the hybrid form-based code. This is another one where the commission is kind of doing not a piecemeal, but a partial recommendation of the full package. The planned action ordinance, which is also actually where the transportation mitigation fee is included, is not part of what the commission would be making its recommendations on per the ordinance that adopted the whole thing, ordinances 695 and 696. So the rest of this is really a review of what you saw several meetings ago. It talks about the various districts within the downtown sub-area, Colonial Town Center, East District. Here's a map that shows each one of those within the downtown. We've got information about each one of those and the overlays that are included within the downtown plan and what those are intended to be doing. So here in this map, you'll see the colonial overlay, the town center overlay, and then this gray line that's all the way around the whole outline is called the transition overlay. And that's, again, if you think back to the wedding cake idea of the density and height of buildings as they transition to areas near and outside of the sub area. We have information about what's being planned for within the concept map. So the Green Street Loop, new public streets, parks, and then the catalyst sites that the city would take on as something to get things moving. This is a map that shows that. We would be sitting in City Hall, but we're not tonight. But what you see roughly across from City Hall is what might be a Central Park someday. You've got that Green Street Loop. You've got up north what's already been completed now by the city, the Colonial Plaza, formerly called just the Festival Street. And here's some pictures of that actually once it's done, and the fact that they had a launch of that last fall. What we also saw last year was the incorporation of transportation improvement program projects that came out of the downtown sub area. So a total of about $29,000 or $29 million for the project costs. Half of that would be the responsibility of the public coffers. The other half would be coming from transportation mitigation fees. The last thing that the city has done to date is incorporate into the new parks legacy plan, which has now been adopted by the city council, both the Central Park and the Green Street Loop as part of the city's park system that's planned. And then jumping to the private side, this is just showing the 23 projects that have either started or been paid permit fees or what have you by March 31st of this year. There's 23 of them, and as you see by the stars, they're pretty regularly spaced throughout the downtown area. The other thing that is briefly mentioned in here is the fact that the city has collected just over $200,000 in transportation mitigation fees to date. A number of the projects, as you see here, were not charged any transportation mitigation fees, and that's because there's currently an administrative policy in place that states that if you are in a pre-existing building and you're changing the use within a building, but your traffic is not any higher than the past use, you're not paying anything, because what's being calculated and charged at this point is just additional trips in existing location. And then these are just the ordinance sections that actually talk about how often these reviews should happen. And I'll get out of this. One last thing to share with you really quickly. No, I don't have it in front of me. Sorry. But the thought is, and the recommendation is coming from the Community and Economic Development Department, is that you would recommend no changes to either the sub-area plan itself or Title 18B. And then the council will be picking up the planned action ordinance independently of the Planning Commission recommendation. And that's it from me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. So as Tiffany said, we do have before us a proposed recommendation motion. If someone would like to amend, change, add to, or make your own type of a motion, looking for that at this time. Okay, don't raise your hands all at once. Okay, there you go. So Connie, would you like to unmute yourself? There
Okay,
you go.
I move that we accept the proposed motion.
And the proposed motion is
Oh,
stated,
that the planning commission recommend no changes to the 2018 downtown sub-area plan or LMC Title 18B.
great. Okay, so we have a
I'll
motion
second.
and Mr. Wagaman second. You were, hey, right on the ball there, Mr. Wagaman. Thank you. You woke up. Okay,
Oh
so we have
man, that was harsh.
sorry. You were yawning earlier, so I just was, okay, so we do have a motion and a second. Any discussion or comments? Seeing or hearing none at this time. So we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion to have no changes to the 2018 downtown sub-area plan or the LMC Title 18B. All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes with those recommendations. Thank you. Okay, no public hearing tonight. And I see no new business on our agenda.
Correct.
And I don't think Mr. Vokey's on tonight.
No, he's not.
Okay, so we go to number 10, reports from staff.
Just to let you know, in terms of upcoming meetings, members of the commission,
Yeah.
We will now not have a meeting on June 17th. So for the rest of the month, you have your Wednesday nights free. We will also not be meeting on July 1st. So your next meeting is Wednesday, July 15th, normal time. And at this point, we are assuming we will be in person. If that's the case, the council chambers will be set up for social distancing and COVID safe operations. And then the topics that evening are going to be the presentation from those who were working, if you recall last year with the Shoreline Master Program update, those that have been involved with restoration activities within the city. So they'll be there to present to you what they've done. And then Mr. Buell will be bringing to you a new chapter to discuss that was part of 18A once upon a time last year, and then it was pulled out as a separate issue. And that is transitory accommodations. I don't know if he wants to say anything else tonight or if we'll wait for July 15th.
Yes, Mr. Bueller.
Just very briefly, the legislature passed regulations on religious transitory accommodations and have preempted many requirements of cities and counties. So we're going to go back in and refresh our proposal and have the Planning Commission review it and make a recommendation to council. Council has also asked that we pursue this.
Great, good. And so that's all from staff on reports. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any reports or comments from the fellow commissioners?
The
Yeah,
comment
Mr.
I made,
Wade.
I made the comment earlier about Wahop Lake and the algae. Dave, are you going to take something on that, or I need to go on the 311 and say something, or?
I made a note of it. I'm going to speak with Paul Busich about it tomorrow morning. But I actually think the signs are the responsibility of the health department, not the city of Lakewood. I'll confirm that tomorrow.
Okay, do I need to do anything other than what? Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other comments at this particular time, we will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
Yeah, good night.